Welcome everybody to the joint committee meeting for the Selectboard, Finance, and Personnel Committee for Monday, March 24th. I'll call the meeting to order. Since we have a lot of guests here, if you're okay, I'm going to move on to our new business.
Yeah.
First item on new business is the discussion with homeowners abutting the covered bridge. Nick Miller is here. Thank you, Nick, for joining us for the field geology services. Nick, do you want to?
Hang on a second.
Yep.
Sorry. First, I just want to check. Jackie, can you hear us? Because you're the only one on Zoom. I want to make sure you can hear us. Oh, well.
While we wait on Jackie, as
Hopefully.
you can see, we have
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you, Jackie.
I can.
Thanks.
two members of the select board here. Erica is absent.
More comfortable than that.
All right, thank you, Nick. Take it away.
All right, so we're here to talk about the town's MVP grant application, which is due,
April 4th.
April 4th.
Yep.
So coming right up. So just wanted to provide people with a little background, and then we can have a discussion. Some of you are abutting landowners to a project we're going to talk about, and you received a letter. That's probably why you're here. You probably have lots of questions, so we can try to answer some of those questions. All right, so the project that we did looked at trying to deal with the flooding that's happening in Conway, right? And so one of the ways you can deal with that flooding is by reconnecting floodplains. Can you advance the slide? So we did a extensive hydraulic model of the South River. And these are some of the results, just showing downtown in the village, just to kind of refresh people's memory, and maybe some people didn't see this when it was completed a year or two ago. But at the 2-year flow event, which is like basically every spring, there's not a lot of flooding outside of the channel. There's a little bit here in the athletic fields on Academy Hill Road. The 10-year event, which happens pretty frequently, shows extensive flooding through downtown in the village. And so these are some of the model results that we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail. You can see that flooding increases in the 100-year flood, and those numbers there are the depth of water in the river going underneath the Main Street Bridge. Next slide, please. And this is just another way to look at the data, showing the water profile flowing downstream to the left, going from left to right, rather, going under and through the Main Street Bridge. So the Main Street Bridge was one of the projects we looked at widening. Can you go to the next slide, please? Because the bridge that's there now is a lot narrower than the bridge that used to be there, and it's narrower than the bridge that should be there if the bridge was properly sized. And so just looking at the existing conditions in the model, and this is a cross sections here looking downstream, this is the river flowing underneath the bridge. The model shows that in a 10-year flow, there's 2 feet of water over Academy Hill Road right in front of this building where we're meeting today. Some of you have seen that in recent years in your memory. So continue, please. So some of the recommendations out of this model were looking at connecting floodplain, and just listed on here are some benefits of the floodplain. But one we're going to focus on is, kind of a safety valve. It stores water and sediment, water during those events and sediment outside of those events, which has a lot of benefits to the town. Continue, please. This project we're going out for a grant application for is looking at reconnecting one of those floodplain areas near the covered bridge, in addition to looking at getting further design work and permitting for this culvert upgrade on Main Poland Road. So this grant, if it was awarded, would be a 2-year project where we would get to do a lot of design, scoping, logistics, try to figure out exactly what makes sense, for a floodplain reconnection project, and try to get those permits And it would also, at the same time, getting permits to upgrade this culvert to a bridge. And this is right in the same area. This is Johnny Bean Brook, which enters right in the area near the covered bridge. So it kind of makes sense geographically, you know, which was one thing we liked about that. So these are some of the projects that were modeled. This is the area that was voted on by town residents as something to move forward with, you know, scoping and, you know, kind of seeing how this could all play out. That's what we're going to talk about today. But we also did look at removing the berm here. Unfortunately, there weren't a lot of like quantifiable benefits to that in terms of lowering flood elevations throughout the village. We also did look at some floodplain lowering on Pumpkin Hollow Brook in some meadow areas near Maple Street and Old Cricket Hill Road. And while those did show benefits, they weren't as much as the ones on South River, probably because there's a lot less water that goes down Pumpkin Hollow Brook than there is down the South River. Next slide, Barney. So what we're talking about in removing and reconnecting floodplains is removing sediment that accumulated behind an old mill dam. You can still see the remnants of it downstream of the covered bridge. And this is what some of those banks look like. It's a fine-grained sediment that was accumulated behind those dams. Next slide. And so this is some of the model results just showing in a map. This is the area we're talking about. And this is showing the extent of flooding in a 10-year flood. In yellow is what floods now. And if we lowered the floodplain, this is saying 5 feet. I think we modeled a 2 feet lowering and a 5 feet lowering in those areas where it is 5 feet. You see this blue area where it's increased flooding in that area. And so, and then that is the change that makes downtown. So it's not a huge amount, but it does have an effect of just under a foot, 0.9 feet of lowering at the 10-year event. And you see some areas that would be flooded currently that aren't flooded once the floodplain is lowered. So that's kind of what we're going with here. And just another way to look at that data is showing you the water depth in the river with and without the floodplain lowering. So we get about 9/10 of a foot of benefit. It reduces the flood peak in timing coming downstream, and it's storing that water during the flood. So while we look at this, I'm just going to read this description because it does a better job probably than I'm saying it right now off the cuff. But the project description is dealing with the area around the historic covered bridge that was restored 20 years ago. This area, there's the historic mill dam, which is still visible, the dam that provided water via an open canal to the mills downstream. The South River has incised into the fine-grained sediments that accumulated behind this dam. These impoundment sediments, also known as legacy sediments, are highly erodible and are a source of fine sediment loading and water quality impacts. The riparian area is a mix of forest and residential lawns. The understory is dominated by Japanese knotweed and other invasive plant species, including bittersweet, which is climbing many of the trees along the river. The in-stream habitat is degraded and lacks complexity. There is good canopy coverage, and cold water inputs from Johnny Bean Brook have the potential to provide excellent fish habitat. And if we're upgrading that crossing on Johnny Bean Brook, then the fish will actually have a way to get up Johnny Bean Brook into that cold water refuge, which they cannot currently do. This priority project involves the excavation and removal of a portion of these legacy sediments for a distance of approximately half a mile upstream of the covered bridge. The proposed work is located on several town-owned parcels as well as privately owned parcels. And that's what we're showing in this map here. Restoration of the natural floodplain connection could be achieved by removing the sediment that is accumulated in the mill pond. Lowering the floodplain reduces the flood elevation and channel velocities in the hydraulic model. This channel velocity reduction yields a reduce in shear stress and erosion, erosive forces along the banks of the South River. So instead of having eroding sediments and sediment added to the South River from these eroding banks, we'd actually be storing sediment. So it has some numbers about how much water and sediment you can store based on the model. This would also store nutrients, which is another good thing for the benefit for our grant application. Invasive species mitigation and removal throughout the project area will help enhance the quality of the riparian buffer and the newly reconnected floodplain. The town-owned portions of the proposed project area will serve as recreational assets for the town of Conway. The site was included as a conceptual design in the 2016 report on the South River watershed. The design can be scaled as desired by reducing or increasing the footprint of the reconnected floodplain based on landowner interest and participation, as well as the availability of funding. The design seeks to provide flood storage for Conway Center while enhancing habitat, reducing erosion and sediment loading, and providing public access to the site for the use of local residents. That's kind of a summary, but the one thing you should definitely understand, and we can go to the next slide now, is that this is a concept, and this concept will be changed, and this is just an idea that came out of that hydraulic model. We did a model, we saw the benefit, and now it's kind of figuring out what the shape of that would be. The town-owned parcels, which are 4 acres, are here along 116, and here on the other side of the river off of Main Poland Road. That's 4 acres. These are the town-owned parcels, and then these are all privately owned. Okay, but this is what we have to put something in the model to see what the benefit is, and this is the geometry that was put in the model. It's nothing like set in stone or anything. It's just a talking point, right? So
Set in sediment.
it's set in sediment. So that's basically it for this project. This has been done before, including in Conway. In 2016, we did a floodplain reconnection. If you want to go to the next slide. We now call it the South River Meadow. And this is a town-owned property. That was lowering the floodplain 3 feet over 1 acre. So 3,500 yards of sediment was removed. It's been working very well. The river gets in there often. More than a dozen times since it was finished in 2016. I think Janet and Michelle are trying to keep a tally, and I can't remember what the number is, but it's been flooding quite often, and that's by design. So this, project is kind of, one step up from what we've already done and seen successful in taking a town-owned property and making it a recreational asset, and having it work with the river and improving flooding. I don't think I need to go through all the rest of the slides in here unless people want to see. I just put a bunch of slides, and all this is in places this has been done, including recently in Brattleboro, a project I was involved in Portland, in downtown Portland, Maine. It's been done all over New England. It's kind of like a new thing for areas where flooding is a problem. We're developed within that river corridor, and there's not a lot of options to improve flooding. So this floodplain reconnection is something that comes up again and again in urban and rural settings. So,
is there any use for the sediment? Like, what is it? Where does it get put? Can it get used?
That's a good question. So the sediment that came out of the South River Meadow, CD Davenport was a contractor. They brought it to their yard. I assume they probably sold the clean fill or used it on projects. I don't know if they charged their customers or not, but there's one project that I have slides on further on in here that I'm aware of in the Mid-Atlantic area where they did a big project, and they contracted with a landscaping company that sold all that loam, and they actually paid for part of the restoration through selling of the loam. And that was an area I actually talked to Bryce the other day when we were walking, where that project was really cool because it was done in a partnership with a university, Franklin and Marshall, and they studied like all the habitats coming back. And when they removed that fill, basically all that legacy sediment that was filled in behind the mill pond, when they removed that, the seed bank that was 300 years old in the old wetland all came back.
Wow.
So it's like they had all these ecology people studying it. It was pretty cool.
Because there's a lot in the South River and the Harris property that got washed up last year, and I
Yep.
wondered, they keep trying, it's a hayfield,
Right.
and I wondered if I know it crushed the hayfield last year, but can it be tilled in and then be useful to the hayfield, or is it just damaging to the hayfield? There are mounds of it.
Right. Yeah, I think when there's a lot of it deposited, you need to kind of scrape it off, or things aren't going to grow through it. But
Yeah.
So I will say this is a great turnout. Wasn't expecting this. So that being said, I want to give the residents plenty of time to speak. Given the amount of people here, we do ask that to keep cross chatter down. There's people that might want to watch this online later on. The owl picks up all cross chatter, and that everybody is limited to one question, not repeated questions. So please limit to one question. Obviously, we'll provide an email address for any other subsequent questions to come our way that we will answer as quickly as we can.
That's good, because I have 100.
And this is the owl. People are wondering what the owl is.
And if you're my neighbor, and you see me walking all the time, you can always pull me over. So I'll just, respect everybody. Obviously, just whoever wants to speak, raise your hand. Go ahead. Yes.
Is this a done deal, or is this just a
Concept. Yeah.
So,
Concepts in the plan.
I just have two questions. We were able to walk the land with which was nice. Appreciate you coming out to be able to do that over on Friday. Two questions. One, you showed the 10-year event. Mm-hmm. That's a projection, you said? Mm-hmm. And so has that ever happened, that projection, or that's just a projection that could happen? When you showed the model up there, you're like, this is a 10-year event, this is a 100-year event. Those aren't things that have happened. Those are only
Our
in the
flood
model.
2 years ago was a once in millennia. So that's,
That was, but that, when you're showing, if you could go back to the slide of the 10-year projection versus a 100-year projection, yeah, one up right there. So, out of those, has any of those happened already?
yes.
Yes.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I guess, that's a question. I have another statement. I know you mentioned that some of these areas are silt and filled with knotweed and things like that. Our particular property is not filled with a lot of silt and knotweed. It's probably 300 trees with no knotweed. So, I don't know if that, I think even when we went down there, you're like, oh, this isn't kind of what I expected to see. So
There's a lot of trees.
yeah, so, and in our property particularly, that's the only way we can access our lower field. So I guess my question was a projection run with just taking the town land and see what that looks like?
Right. No. So we had, GZA was the company that we were working with to do the modeling, and we can only run so many scenarios through it. So they ran a bunch, including Main Street Bridge, including different floodplain reconnections. There was something here which was like a conveyance channel, to pipe the brook around town. So we did not. I did that acreage calculation to show that 4 acres is town owned and like 4.5 is privately owned. So based on that, you know, if all things are equal, you'd get half the benefit, you know, if you just did the town-owned land. Of course, it's gonna be way more complicated, because have to get out there, see where all the big trees are, see where, you know, actually on the ground, survey. There needs to be wetlands delineation, professional surveying. This is a concept in search of grant money right now. That's the state, you know, so.
We have a question online here. Jackie?
Yeah, hi. So at some point, are you going to explain to each landowner, you know, what exactly is gonna happen to their land?
Yes, thank you, Jackie. So right now, we're just, you know, trying to get grant money to do a study to figure out what is feasible. But if that happens, we'll have 2 years to work on, you know, kind of proposing what we actually want to do. So landowner interest and buy-in is obviously paramount to that happening. Also, there'll be funding considerations, endangered species and other sort of permitting hurdles we'll have to jump through. So, you know, there's a long way to go, and, you know, everyone will be involved in that process to the extent that they want to be.
Just to
Okay, great, thank you.
Sorry, just to refresh my memory, this modeling was the second highest benefit to the town, right, for
Yes.
for, okay.
Yeah, the Main Street Bridge was the one that seemed to be the obvious one. Mass DOT, you know, says they'll get around to it when they get around to it, and we can't really force their hand, so we're looking at other
The rest of it'll be
things.
at the river.
Yeah,
by the time we get
looking
around.
at other things we can do, because there's definitely you know, desire to improve flooding within town. So, Jim.
We live right by the bridge.
Yeah.
Some of what I have heard proposed is pretty bad. And the other thing, I get concerned about grants. How much is the grant going to cost for the study? Or how much grant money you're looking for the study?
So there's no town match.
Right.
It's all grant from the state.
I think it's between 200 and 300, but I don't remember
Yeah,
exactly.
we think between about 200.
I think
A lot of that's for
yeah.
permitting.
Yeah.
The permitting is gonna be a major chunk.
200,000?
Yes.
I get very upset with grants because the state gives us grants. However, where does the state get all that money for the grants? And I've asked one of our former representatives where it all comes from. I never heard, because I wanted to know. And at the time, I was on the select board, I think. The other part is, have you been down to where the floodplain has been lowered?
Yes.
There's a lot of silt coming in there. And to go back into history, I've forgotten how long, in the 90s probably, the highway department put in the riprap just above the bridge.
Mhm.
And what it did was change the flow of the water under the bridge, and it's taken away, I don't know, 1/8 of an acre of our property since that was done. Maybe less than 1/8 of an acre, but an awful lot of sugar maple trees and other kinds of trees. Because they made the flow come faster under the bridge, and I started calling all kinds of agencies, and nobody could do anything, and so they pass it on to the next number they gave me. And it finally came back to the first number I called, and I gave up. But there are still things that could be done that aren't being done, and things that have been done that made it worse.
Yes.
The river in that curve up from the bridge used to buffer. It doesn't buffer anymore. And there was a a hole, or whatever you call it, above the bridge that helps slow the water down, and some genius fill that hole in, so that doesn't hold any water. We got $90-something thousand for the rec field. And there was a whole lot of lack of common sense in the work that went on in the rec field. And they still haven't solved the problem that it was supposed to solve.
Right.
And I worry about some of the things that are being planned now that aren't going to solve the problem.
Right. So, yeah, some of what you're talking about is in Irene in 2011,
Yeah.
that geocell retaining wall that lasted all of 2 months. It was green plastic and compressed soil filled
Oh, I
with plants
thought it
and good
lasted a
intentions
week.
and whatever. All washed away. And then they put in riprap, and you're right, that the riprap comes out farther than that vertical wall did, and it's constricting the channel more, and it's increased the erosion over on the left bank of the abutment and of your property downstream because of how they did that repair.
The riprap that I'm thinking about is before they put in that modern stuff that washed away in a week or two. And was that with Irene? I know I stood there and watched
When
it
Irene
go.
is when that geocell thing washed out, but that was the third retaining wall to wash out
Yeah,
in the last 50 years
Yeah.
at that site because that bridge is too small. The model that we did showed that increasing the span would not only improve like areas that flooded in town and how much water is going under the bridge and over the bridge, but it also reduced the velocity a lot in that area. So reducing velocity basically we interpret as like less erosive force. So having a bigger bridge, less flooding, less erosion is a good thing, but we can't do that. So this grant is about looking at our option B, which is trying to find a floodplain to reconnect. And maybe that's the covered bridge. There could be other areas, but that's what we're working on presently, because there is some town-owned land there.
We own property right off the covered bridge on Poland Road between ourselves and Recor. There's a culvert that washed out. What are the plans for that and when?
Are you talking about Main Poland Road, or are you talking about
Yes.
Adams Road?
Main Poland
Main Poland Road.
Yeah, so as part of this grant, it'll be looking at floodplain reconnection and getting the permits to do that bridge.
They want to turn it in from a culvert to a bridge.
Yeah, from the culvert to the bridge.
So that was
Is
this,
that the picture,
Oh,
right?
so that's what it-
just
That's
knock
the
out-
one by
what it
Jimmy's
looked
house. Yeah.
Yep, so this is looking upstream
By our house.
by your
Yes.
house. And that's kind of a mock-up photo of what it could look like. And this was the design that was done at the 30% design level or whatever. So now it would be to get this further to like 100% design and actually get the permits.
Too bad it looked like that before they put the culvert in.
Did it
There was a
really?
bridge there, stone walls on each side, pretty wide anyway.
Yeah, I wonder how much they're gonna have to dig on both of our properties.
I don't know, but this is like, at this point in the conversation, this is all I want to say tonight. When we first found out about the first part of this project, meaning our culvert, there were people running around on our land, putting up flags and all this.
Right.
No one had contacted Jackie, who's listening, me or Skip, and it was all our land. And all of a sudden, all these people are around, nobody from FERCog had ever reached out to us. So the real, I guess, shock to me tonight is some of my neighbors are saying they've walked around with you and looked at land, and tonight is the first time I've heard about the second part of this project, which also impacts our land. And so I'm hoping communication could be a lot better.
Yeah, we're not only in the dark about this, we didn't even receive a letter that the meeting was for tonight.
Yeah, they didn't even receive a letter.
Grapevine.
Right on our
Yeah.
property,
That'll
someone
work.
should say something.
I'll concur that the letter that we received from you with the map was the first thing we had heard about the fact that our properties were being targeted. The last we had heard about developing on the South River was up the reservoir that Manuel owns and was offered to the town, from what I understand. And if you look at that, there's a lot more acreage than you're gonna have water for a long time. And if you're dredging it out, you've got a place to store it until you process it and sell it. So I just want, I know this is not a topic of conversation. You want to talk about the piece of property that's right above the covered bridge, the piece of property that is behind Jimmy's that is, actually you can't access it because he is one of the abutters, I'm the other. And I'm not sure I'm keen on people walking through my land or Jimmy's down to a park.
Well, but between that and 116 being on the other side, all the town property you're pointing out there has no access. And would not have access in the future. You can't do anything on 116.
So what I'd heard was that the Manuel property was disqualified because, gee, it was private or whatever reason, they couldn't have a park there. And they could have a park here. And I'm like going, well, this is not the purpose of why we're here, is to come up with yet another park
Conway is a park.
for, exactly, but for our town crew to take care of. And if you've looked around, that we don't really need parks, and the parks that we do have seem to end up getting just trashed. And I'm not sure that it's necessarily by residents. I think we have a lot of people that take advantage of it, and I think that's great. But if you go out to the confluence of the Deerfield and the South River, Conway Station, that's a mess.
I think the park was.
And that's DER. So if they can't even keep it clean, I think it's more than we should expect our town crew to maintain.
Yeah,
these.
the park would have been just an added bonus.
Yeah.
The purpose of this is to lower the floodplain.
Okay, I'm glad we have the focus here, because for that reason, I think the Manuel property might make a lot more sense and a lot easier to do, but I know that's not part of the discussion tonight.
Not
It is.
necessarily.
It's yeah. It has been part of the discussion. We wanted the residents to come here to provide their input.
Okay. Well, all right, I think we can take, I think we've got most of the
It's
residents.
unanimous.
Welcome.
No.
Welcome, Conway. I think you'd love it. You moved into a really nice spot. The first thing you find out, hi, we're gonna take half your land.
It's
You're
going
like,
half,
whoa.
yes.
So, we're right across. How are your corgis? God, they are the cutest corgi. Oh, I'm sorry.
Could I
I think you need to get
suggest,
control here.
could I suggest that a much more informal and much more casual meeting happen between everybody whose land is involved, so we can just be brought up to speed on what this is all supposed to be before it's handed to us and we're allowed one question tonight?
I certainly second that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
we can
what this
get
is.
another meeting going without all the select
I
board
think
members.
that would really help.
Yeah.
Can we nix the camera too?
Well, yeah, we can just
I'll
do it
dress up.
informal, not actual meetings, right?
Yeah.
So yes.
So just a question, even if this happens only on the town land, I mean, we know the flooding events are becoming more common, 100-year events, 10-year events are more common. If the floodplain is lowered, would it be something that would have to happen again and again? As it builds up, no, it's not gonna continue to store silt, and then would they have to do it again 10 years from now after a major event?
So that's extremely unlikely. So the reason that the banks are built up as high as they are now is because it was a lake, right? It was a lake behind a dam. It filled in with sediment, and then since that's breached, 100 years ago or more, the channel is cut into that pond sediment, and leaving very steep stream banks. In a lot of areas, when we were walking the other day, you could see that the banks were really steep and they've been armored with a lot of rock, probably because they erode pretty easily. So lowering that floodplain, you're supposed to get water coming over there and storing sediment. You're gonna see silt, as Jim pointed out at South River Meadow, there's silt being stored there. That's a good thing. It's not gonna,
It's not going to
upgrade
continue
all
to
the way
accumulate.
up to where it is now.
Okay.
And, that's.
Would you mind representing everyone here? If
What do you mean?
meaning the communication. I don't know if I can get everybody's email address or phone numbers.
So would you like me, are you asking me to be like the liaison to
Yes,
everybody?
if you don't mind.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Okay. Great.
If they're okay with it.
We didn't even know.
Liaison, not representative.
We've
sorry.
had we own 26 acres right off the bridge. So we're gonna be impacted by this. In the past, with the Conservation Committee, and even this project with the culvert, we've had people all over our property with no prior notice. I think it's discourteous at minimum. Someone walks on our land, our neighbors are welcome to use it, you know this, Jimmy.
Yes, sir.
But anyone else that's putting flags and marking trees, and they did it 3 years ago, and they left tape all over the property, right in front.
And we did that.
I'm dug in 41 years restoring this place and the land.
So
I understand it's not correct to infringe on someone else's property with no prior notification. We didn't even get a letter.
Right.
And we're probably gonna be heavily impacted because of what we own there.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is a wetlands delineation, which would have been done in conjunction with that permit to make this, right? So when they do a wetlands delineation, they have to go out and flag. But I agree, yes, someone should,
People all over the place.
it's not an excuse, but the problem is that everyone who's working on this at the town level and, consultants like myself, we're doing this, we're busy, people aren't getting paid to do all this other stuff that they should be, like, we should be doing communication, but we're sorry, it's just,
Our
it's
town
hard,
liaison in that instance
Yeah.
was the weak link.
Yeah, so,
We figured that out.
but, yeah, going forward, things have gotta get better, for sure.
Could I see that map again that had the paint delineations
Sure.
of where the impact was gonna be for my neighbors? It looked a lot like, it showed that two of them were town-owned. No, it was
The
more
next
like
one?
it had acreage written.
Oh, with the green.
was that
Yeah.
For that pink one.
It's the next slide.
Little
Next.
further.
Oh, there it is, okay. So I just would like, oh, thank you. Where'd you get this?
In the mail.
They come to me. Okay, so will you show me where the covered bridge actually is on that map?
It's down here.
Okay, okay, and so that first bit is, I'm just going up the river, so that first bit is owned owned by the town.
The
1.8.
1.8,
that's the
2.2.
town, and
Okay.
that's the town.
And you're saying, just so that I understand, you're saying you're gonna be digging down, and getting out the silt, am I saying it just too simply?
So, have you been to the South River Meadow and seen what that looks like?
Yeah.
It's basically that same thing. So the area that are artificially high will be taken down. So you can leave some mature standing trees, as we did here at this project. But it's just coming in and scraping off the top and bringing down, creating a little basin, right?
For the water.
So the flood water and the
Okay.
sediment
Just
can be
how much?
stored.
I mean, that bank is maybe 10, 15 feet to 116, to the river base, right? Maybe 20 feet. I don't know. I'm just guessing. How much would be cut?
It's gonna depend on the area, right? In some areas, that package of sediment, that thickness of sediment is a lot more than in other places. In some places, it's already been eroded when the river cut through 30 years ago or whatever. So it's really gonna depend, but it's that flat sediment. When you're walking down the hillside, you get onto that flat, and then that's all what the old pond was. So that's the area we're talking about. And just to bring up what Bryce was saying a minute ago about man wells, that's still on the table. We can look at that. there's not a lot more area there. It's maybe a couple acres that you could do at Manuel's. That was not included in the model, just again, because of model runs and, you know, what they were able to do in the budget. So we don't have quantifiable numbers, but we could, you know, basically say if you took out this much sediment at Manuel's, it would be, you know, basically equivalent of taking out this much sediment at the covered bridge, because you're kind of in the same reach of the river. And that is also an area that's artificially high legacy sediment.
Wouldn't it be less expensive to do that because it's more accessible?
Possibly. We actually looked at scoping it a number of years ago, and it was in time when there were was a lot of beaver activity up in Manuel's, and so they weren't able to get in there without crossing wetlands, and basically it would have. They figured if they went ahead with it at that time when all the beavers were in there, it would legally change the status of his land to be wetland, because there was just all beaver dams and everywhere, and so they didn't, because Jim didn't want his land to be classified as wetland. Yes.
How do you get all that fill out of there? I mean, I was reading the report, and it looks like you're gonna need 4,500 dump trucks to get all that fill out.
Yeah.
I'm going, you don't have much access to this land from the main Pullen Road side. You can go through Aaron's land, but let's say 3,000 trucks going down there, you know, 10 yards. So much for your orchard, because they'll have to take mine out with yours. And then you've got yours there. Not gonna be much there. Is that gonna be going out, taken out of, right out of their property? And then what about the 2 acres that's landlocked between Jimmy's and mine? How's that gonna get out? Because you can't really bring it out through Jackie Stallings, and you can't really bring it out through mine because it's bracketed by streams. So it'd have to go through Jimmy's land.
Well, I mean, this is all, you know, questions that will have to be, you know.
That's why we're
figured out.
asking them.
Yeah.
Because we've been sitting at home after we got the letter. You have no idea the conversations that we've been having and the lack of sleep we've had. So this is great to at least have it here, and let's get it on the table.
Well, it sounds like we need another, like you guys said, an informal meeting. So we'll set that up because we do have a time restriction today. We have
No,
a
I
lot on the
understand that,
agenda.
but I think this is great, and I understand.
But you shouldn't lose any sleep because again, this is a concept, right? There's
Well, that's
nothing
good to know,
moving
because
forward.
I've lost enough, and I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lose any more. All right? You can worry, she's gonna worry about it from now on.
Yes, let's have one more question.
Is this, all of this excursion, excavation, gonna relieve the pressure on the curve right here in town before it goes underneath the bridge? Is it gonna be able to contain enough water to do that?
The model showed it would lower the river by 0.9 feet. So it's not going to solve all the problems, but it's a step in the right direction.
Okay. And I've got another question.
That's 8 inches.
It's 9/10 of a foot. 10 inches. 11 inches.
That project's gonna cost, budgeted, $6,000 right now. $6 million.
Well, I don't know about that.
And that's why I'm just reading what the report said. I think I got the right report, is the most recent one. And that's at $2024. So when this gets done, I'd say we're probably talking double.
I would not hold much weight to those numbers.
Okay, okay, so you think
they're you know, charging like $6 a square foot for seating and all
Well, I was
sorts of
wondering,
stuff.
because it
Yeah, I
costs
mean,
more to do this
so-
than it does to replace the bloody
Yeah, I mean,
bridge.
we're not even there
Yeah,
yet. I
yeah.
think-
So yeah, that would be way down the line.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you had one more.
Yep.
Okay.
Good. You got that time my questions? I'm leaving.
Okay, so what we'll do, yes, here's the last question, yes.
Okay. Just to introduce myself, my name is John Wilson. I worked 36 years with the federal government, 10 with Corps of Engineers, 26 with Fish and Wildlife. And I worked with engineers that saw a lot of erosion projects, worked on a lot of erosion projects, things like that. I'm not an engineer myself. And I just wanted to point out, the west end of that, which is where I live, there's a 45-degree curve up at the top edge of that, top left edge. And, yeah, and an owner probably around the late 1940s put some riprap in there about halfway along my property. That's been keeping that side from eroding. The 2 times in 20 years that the river has come over the top of the bank on that side, it always tries to go about halfway across my yard, pretty close to my house, pretty close to the next neighbor's house, and onward. It's going to be really important to prevent, I would say keep that riprap there, maybe reinforce it. I would not like to see it undermined, for obvious reasons. What the river's been doing over the last 20 years, it's been widening on its own. It's been widening on the south side into that low area that you want to excavate. So I just wanted to point out there's something natural happening there of its own accord, and it's just a question of how much of an improvement would this be perhaps over what the river is trying to do now anyway in that stretch. Further down I can't speak to. I don't know what it's like down on the town there.
So I'll say thank you everybody for joining. Obviously we have a water problem here in Conway like many other towns. Ignoring it is not an option. So having these ideas and especially the feedback from those of you that have seen how your areas have changed, how the river has changed over the years is critical to us understanding how to move forward or what to move forward with. So I appreciate everybody coming in and providing your feedback, and to provide additional feedback, we will reach out to you again. Jimmy, I'll be bugging you quite a bit.
Yep.
You want
But
email?
yes,
Sign
yes,
up and-
yes.
Well, if they could all go through Jimmy, and
Yeah.
then we can communicate, yeah.
And then one more thing, and many of us here can attest to it, is that the projections on what a 5, a 10, a 25, a 50 year, and a 100-year storm are, what they were 20 years ago, they aren't today. So 20 years ago, a 50-year storm is now a 20-year storm, and it's only going to get worse. So, you know, this is one plan, one concept. There needs to be more throughout time. So again, it's very critical that we receive your history on what you've seen on your properties and what you've seen in town. So again, I appreciate everybody coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say one last thing, Chris?
Yes, yeah, of course.
So the other thing at play here is all the folks trying to get the grant money, we're trying to figure out what would MVP fund, right? And so they like people to have community outreach, they like people to have nature-based solutions. They probably will not fund a permit for just a culvert to a bridge. But if you think, okay, we can do some floodplain reconnection in conjunction with that, then that all of a sudden, you know, is a more attractive project to the funders. So that's kind of where we were with like partnering these things. It doesn't mean either of them will ever happen necessarily, but you know, you kind of have to bring it all in so that you can get some money to do something.
And the three of us can work together to find out the miscommunication and how people weren't notified, because that's not only rude, it's dangerous. Like we live in a small town, people hunt, you know, so. I'll just say that. Anyway.
Well,
they weren't shy.
One thing I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of, since you're here, and this is so great to have such a great turnout, there is another MVP project that we just got a grant awarded for. We're working in conjunction with Ashfield. When MVP started, all the towns had to develop their own plan for how they were going to move forward. We did ours in 2018 with Ashfield. In order to keep being eligible for funding through MVP, we have to update our plan. This is the year for us to update our plan. However, MVP has changed how they do things, and they're much more interested in having a sort of choreographed process to get the community involved in discussions about how the community wants to see the problem solved. So this one's called MVP 2.0. And we're going to be starting soon. They have an equity partner that we just found out about, and we're going to have a kickoff meeting. But I want everybody, I'll be posting in the Conway Currents on the website, but this is a process where we want to get absolutely everybody who wants to be involved in talking about, we're only going to have a tiny seed project. I think it's only like $50,000, but this is going to be done with community input. So we'd really love it if people were interested and wanted to participate in that.
I like words. What does MVP stand for?
Oh, Municipal Vulnerability Program, sorry, yeah. Yeah, and it's gotten much more traction over the years. It's sort of fairly new in terms of grant programs, but this is the one that's really trying to address climate change in the best way possible. But they take into account not just sort of like the science, they take into account community and how things, the process and equity and all kinds of other, they have like 12 points that you have to meet when you do a grant application. So this would be a great one just to have everybody sort of help the direction of Conway. How does Conway want to move forward?
I know I've passed my one question, but I do want to ask this. How would you gain access to our properties? Would you implement eminent domain? How do you gain access to doing work on private land if we don't want it?
Without knowing the topography, which I don't know of the area, my original thought was to ask Mass DOT for a curb cut off 116 so that we would be going into town property. But I don't know if it's possible because I don't know how far, would we have to,
And I'm talking push comes to shove. You need to get on our property. A lot of
I
people
think
are
that's putting the cart
discontented.
before
Yeah,
the
this
horse.
is a concept. This is only a concept, so we're not anywhere
It's a
near.
fair question.
Yeah.
Does eminent
Absolutely.
domain apply in this
It is a fair
circumstance?
question. Something
Skip.
I would not want to broach.
Okay.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank
you
you.
so much.
Hey, welcome to Conway. I apologize, but I can't
Yeah, so we should do like that. City council, I haven't done it right. Yeah, so you can run your, as soon as everybody vacates.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, you're here with.
For the schools, yeah.
All right.
You guys have a great program.
So I'm seeing who all we have
That would be
here.
very helpful. I mean, I'm gonna do it.
We have Frontier. So should we start there, I would assume?
Yeah, oh, the door's closed, yep.
Okay.
Oh, no, it's Franklin Tech.
Oh, Franklin.
6:53. I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of March 17th. Second. All in favor? Aye. All right, carried. Did Roy vote? Roy, did you vote on, there's a motion on the table? Meeting minutes from last week? Aye, 4-0. Okay.
Good?
We're good, thank you.
All right.
And the personnel committee is here.
Okay.
This doesn't involve the personnel committee. Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry for the delay.
Thank you very much.
No problem. How's everybody doing tonight? I'm Rick Mott, I'm the school superintendent over at Franklin County Tech, here to present our school budget and the impact that it has for the town of Conway. So I'm just, I believe our budget book was sent out to you.
Yes.
All right, so you have a copy of the budget book. It's pretty self-explanatory, and so I'm not going to get into all the details. I'm going to try to focus on Conway tonight. Just to let you know, the front page, the first thing I just would like to mention
is we're in the feasibility, and then we're now in the design phase of a Massachusetts School Building Authority project. What that project looks like won't be defined for the rest of this year and into next year, as far as whether or not we're going to take our existing building and try to renovate it and try to save it. That's the first goal. The second is to take our existing building and maybe add on to required square footage space for some of our shop programs. And then the third concept is a core building. So right now, that's what we are in the design phase for. We do plan on that going out to our 19-member towns for a vote sometime in the fall, I think, of 26, going into 27 in that time frame. And then I don't know how long it would be from there. As far as our shops are concerned, we did add a brand new one this year called Aviation Maintenance Technology. We were able to build a 12,000 square foot hangar through competitive grants, so not coming out of the tax base here. As far as that was concerned, it was about $4.2 million. That enabled us through donations and what have you to have about a half a dozen aircraft. We were able to get a couple $1 million worth of training modules, and we have the first group of freshmen in there now. So we're real excited about that opportunity, because for those who are new and don't know, we exist on the property line between the Turners Falls Airport and our school. So we got this big building sitting right there. We just finished off, well, one of the key components that I remember coming to this town about 9 or 10 years ago, and one of the questions I got asked, I believe it was you, right? Was, why don't you start an animal science program? We're losing kids. I believe it was you. You were sitting right here. And I've been at the district now for about 18 years. So why don't you start an animal science program? Because right now we have to pay $30,000 tuition and then $30,000 transportation to send someone to Smith. So we took the towns, and you weren't the only town that said that, but you reinforced it for us. And I think that was really big. So, well, today we have a 4,800 square foot veterinary clinic on about 2 acres of land, and we have animals, and we have an animal science program now, and we've already reaped the benefits from some of our other towns that would have been costly. Now you're considered, now let's talk about the assessments, right? You're considered by the Department of Ed to be just as wealthy as Wellesley, Wayland, Weston, Dover, Sherburne, Concord, Lexington, and all of the richest towns in the United States.
We're well aware.
Right? The formula is not helping the town of Conway.
No.
You're assessed right now per pupil, and I'm going to get to that right now through so this whole budget book is a clickable link. You can click to anything that you're interested in finding, and it should take you right there. I'm going to go down to the sources of funding here, to the assessments. And if I get here we go. I'm going to go to that per pupil cost. You'll see a little hand. I'm going to scroll down to Conway. You'll see the far right-hand column. It says $19,010. So you're considered one of our wealthiest towns. And you'll see your enrollment trends over the last 4 years, 10, 9, 7, and 8. So your assessment, is what you need to hear tonight, is going down $20,000. It's no magic that we did, it's just one less student, right? So that's kind of the way that it would pan out. What's the projected for next year? Well, you have 2 seniors that are graduating, and we have a half a dozen applications. Will all of those 6 students say yes, they want to come? We don't know that. They haven't confirmed yet. But I could probably say we'll be closer to that number next year than we are to 8, based on what we would be going down in the future. The other expense that is for the town of Conway is 9 years ago we had a windows and doors project, and that was new paving, roof, all that stuff. Let me get to that. Here we go. And for Conway, it's $6,430, and that's based on the equalized valuation method, which changes every couple of years. So that will fluctuate a few $100. between now and the life of the bond. So that won't go up substantially. I only highlighted the other one down low, Shelby, not because it was close to the same price, but because I have 2 town meetings tonight. So I wanted to be sure I got them both in. So on this, whenever you're looking at your enrollment is concerned, well, we do big studies on enrollment to try to plan ahead. So here's how the county enrollment kind of lays out. You can see all the school district, 4 Rivers, Franklin County Tech, Frontier, and this is all based on grade 9 through 12 is the line in the blue here, and the individual lines are per grade level. So that just gives you an idea there. Where do we get this number from? The school attending children report. The thing that's good about this, if you wanted to find out anything about your towns or the towns associated with Conway or your school districts, you just press on that little button and it will take you to every single town from pre-K to grade 12 when the internet is working. All right, so yeah, there it goes. All right, so you just look up your town so we can project where we're going to be in 4, 8, 10 years out. So we do these projections so we can make sure that we're accurately aligning our budget to meet those projections. With that said, I'm going to go back to where we are with our enrollment. Come on, it's not clicking as good, but it's all right. Come on.
Adam, you want to go yell at those people? I'll give you that. Thank you.
So here we are with the enrollment. We're in this year right here, as you can see down here, we're 2024-25. We had 180, which that's the orange line is the freshmen. We had 180 freshmen. We had 617 total 8th graders in our catchment area, right? As you can see, that catchment's going down slightly as this orange line goes down to meet that percentage. So you can kind of see that's where we currently are with our freshmen. And how does that pose right now to where we were in 2015-16? We had 662 in our catchment area, and we had only 132 enrolled. Well, why is we've taken more students here than we did here? Well, how's that true? You take 180 here, only 132 here. This is based on 150 applicants. 132 out of 150. This 180 is based on 290. So it's a big discrepancy in how that data is taken a look at. But this is that school attending children report that I told you about. So back, 10 years ago, we knew we were going to be here. And 10 years from now, here's where we're going to be. So we can kind of get an idea on where we're going to be with our enrollment. I'm going to go back to the sources of funding up here. And we're going to look at Chapter 70. You've heard about Chapter 70 from Frontier and some of the other school districts. They've changed how they do the formula. You heard of that word hold harmless? So hold harmless is when you get paid the same amount of students from when your enrollment dropped as if it was still at a high amount. Well, we've been out of hold harmless for a number of years because our enrollment has been growing as our programs increase. Well, we increased by 11 students the previous year, and they put us in hold harmless. So they changed the formula, and it significantly, you can't predict that. And so they're no longer giving you the per pupil expenditures from the state for Chapter 70 if your enrollment increases. They're handpicking how they're going about that. So it impacts our regional transportation. It impacts our entire budget. And as you see our Chapter 70 right here, 2022 to 23, it went up 600,000. Then it went up 500,000. Then it went up 20,000. Then it went up 100 and something thousand, and those are both enrollment tick-ups. So it's not staying consistent with the number of students that we are bringing in. So how do we make up for it? Well, we go down here, and we got tuition revolving. Those are those students that have to pay $25,000, not counting transportation, that come to us from other non-member towns. So we have $765,000 to try to help offset that. That's in this number right up here. So the other parts of the budget is our pre-employment program. Our state aid transportation, I won't get too detailed in, but we're getting $882,000 reimbursed out of a $1.3 million financial burden to our district. So we're still going back to the towns for that. So that's where we are. Excess and deficiencies, we all hear about that. That's the town of Conway's free cash. So it's $657,000. Where do we get that number from? See, with this whole budget book should be transparent. You should be able to click in and find out that every number could be linked to an outside source outside of Franklin Tech, including excess and deficiencies. You click on that, it will bring you to the Department of Revenue website. If it loads, and it may not load. All right, so, oh, that happens, so it's not gonna load. Basically, you can click on that when you're at home on your own Wi-Fi, and it will load right to the Department of Revenue. Then you scroll down and click on Franklin County Tech, and that number 657 will be in there. And so how do we spend our money? And that's the last part of the presentation. Well, the biggest part of this is instructional services. Enrollment goes up, and so does our instructional services. So that's probably the biggest rate here, biggest increase. We now have, instead of 2 electrical teachers, we have 3. Instead of, 2 carpentry instructors, because we built a house there behind the outside, we got 4. Those kind of things had to happen to provide the education. That's really based on per pupil. And regional transportation we discussed, it's right here. The other biggest nut that you've probably heard about is insurance. We're part of the Hampshire Regional Trust. For the first time in my business managers, he was here for 29 years, and he's retiring at the end of the year. It went up 20%. It's never seen double digits before, never mind 20%. So that was a hit to our budget we couldn't have anticipated. One of the things you'll see that's lower down here is capital stabilization. Remember these 2 years we've came to you, said we're going out, instead of going out to bond to our 19-member towns for $1.5 million for a feasibility study for the MSBA, we had a retired HVAC Siemens project that was costing us $500,000 a year. That expired, we put that money right into that, so that enabled us to pay for it without having to go out to the bond twice. Once for the feasibility study and once for a potential project, which would have long-term debt. So we wanted to try to avoid that, and we were able to do that. So now we're at $238,000. What are we using capital stabilization for? To prevent us from shutting down. So what happened is we have electrical switchgear that's from Federal Pacific with old technology. If one of those go out, we're out of school for at least a month, if not 2, as they rebuild a new switchgear which doesn't exist anymore. So us getting together as a building grounds team, we figured we just buy one, have it on standby. So we spent the $100,000, had it on standby. As soon as we had that rebuilt on standby in 2 months, 2 weeks from that date, it went down. We would have been out of school for a long time. We were only out 24 hours because we had it on standby.
Wow.
So then we went out and bought another one. Yep, and we had to replace that one. So that's going to continue. We do need a new roof. That's a $25 million project. We do need all this other stuff. This is why we qualified. We look beautiful on the outside, but when they came in and put us under the microscope on our internal structure, it was no doubt that we were a school that went to the top of the list of the MSBA reimbursable. There's about a 65% reimbursement to the towns. When that does go through, or not go through, we'll see. And so that's how we spend our money. That should be, I'm not the accountant, but those 2 numbers should match. And how we project going forward. One of the things that we're focused on, the last screen I'm going to show you, I'll just scroll to it rather than go to the table of contents since I know where it is. It's right here. All the vocational schools in the entire state. Here they all are. This chart basically means this is external data, not data that I put together. This came to us. How many students are going into their field and which they're going to your school for? we lead the entire state each of the last 3 years by a large margin. So we're doing what we set out we would do, is get our kids out on co-op, get them employed into the vocations that they have come to us for, and we lead the state in that category. The problem with a lot of these schools that don't do a lot of that, they try to be college prep, they try to do all the things. Frontier has an unbelievable program. Why would we want to even go? We want kids to stay at Frontier to go through those great college-oriented programs. That's not who we are. We have some of that as a guide for particular shop areas, but too many of these Voc schools are trying to have a budget both sides of the. That's not our philosophy as evidenced by the data. So that's our overall budget, kind of where we are as a school. I'll take any questions that you may have. Yes.
How many students enrolled in the aviation tech program right now?
This is our first year. We can only take 12. We got 12.
Wow.
And so, I mean, as we just had one grade level a year, eventually we'll get the second instructor and so forth. So that will be exciting. That's, you know, the aviation mechanics technician is the #1 hands-on job in the United States for their like need, because there's such a big retirement force that wasn't replaced. So now companies like, you know, Boeing and United Airlines are paying people $75,000 so they can teach them how to do the job. Well, they'll already be certified by the time they get out. So that's going to be exciting.
So you're probably aware that there's a similar situation in the defense industry.
Yes.
For example, you know, if any kid coming out of a technical school, if they became a Navy certified welder, they're going to have a job for life.
Yeah, and they've been told that, and we have a few of them. Actually, we've got a few seniors this year. I'll be curious to know if one of them would be from Conway, that are going into the Navy for exactly that out of our welding program.
The other thing that's interesting is that there are, I know the Navy the best because they were my client, but you know, there are Navy defense contractors in Massachusetts. There's, you know, Fairbanks Morse is a big one. Rolls-Royce is another one, which is now their Walpole, Mass facility has been acquired by Fairbanks Morse. And those types of defense contractors are always trying to make connections to young people in technical schools to steer them towards those very high-paying defense jobs, including defense aerospace. Which, if you think if the aerospace program that you have has high standards for commercial aerospace, well, you should see what it is for defense aerospace.
Yeah. Oh, I bet I bet that's unbelievable. We're really excited about this particular program, and we're dying to see it take off. I just had to do
Right. Is it okay?
Yeah.
So first of all, just congratulate you on your fashion choice. I think you look dapper.
That's great.
But and it is true. A few years ago, I was the one that was like, "Yeah, help us out. We're sending these kids down to Smith. It's killing us."
Right.
Since then, as I'm sure you're aware, Frontier and I believe other schools have gotten significant grants to do basically vocational training, much more vocational training in large. I know the computer-assisted design, big machine that they get, and everything, a lot more closer to some of the programs that you offer. And I believe other schools in our county have gotten the similar grant.
So what that is called Chapter 74 Light. So students will never be able to acquire the hours to be either certified or employed at a high rate. That's the problem with, you know, if you just do something part-time, you're not going to get the hours that you need to accrue in order to be licensed in a particular shop or trade. So they're just getting, that's great that these schools are getting exposed to some of that stuff. We've had 2 or 3 students get exposed to it and then leave Frontier and come to us, right? Because they knew after speaking with industry partners, there's no co-op opportunities, there's no job training opportunities. They want to make sure that they get those. And so we had the highest co-op percentage in the entire state. Number of kids, right now we have 110 plus kids out on paid co-op every 2 weeks. So that's something that is not comparable. So we offer a different intensify where 1 week You do nothing but that vocational trade. There's not even anything else that's interrupting it. And then that 1 week, those kids are also going out and they're doing some, of their jobs in the evening and what have you. So it's really intensified, which is why we are able to boast such a high amount of that. So we applaud the member schools of getting the kids exposed to it. That's good. That's a real positive thing for everybody, for all the students to have those opportunities.
So Phil touched on something, and that's the funding, right, with grants.
Yeah.
Technical and trade schools are becoming more popular for good reason.
Mm-hmm.
The services provided and the robbery of student loans, right?
Yeah.
So it's what kids can afford. They can get a job right when they get out. The concern is the funding. We're looking at a 20% increase from fiscal year 22 to projected fiscal year 26. That's a little over 4% each year.
Mm-hmm.
What can be done to help facilitate that gradual, very steady increase in funding?
So
operating budget.
You're referring to the assessments from year to year?
Yes.
Yeah. So from year to year, they've been going for us, they have ranged anywhere from the last 10 years, we're probably slightly below 3, or right around 3%. We've been a little bit more recently, as these last 2 years, when you see we get less Chapter 70 money, and that makes it more challenging because you don't expect that when you have a higher enrollment. It's all in the funding formula. Right now, the governor's office and the Department of Ed, along with consultants, are now currently re-looking at the state formula once again.
Good.
Because they know exactly that particular question is, you can't budget for it if a school district comes to you and asks for X amount of cents. There are school districts in the area going for 9, 10, 11% because they're shocked by what happened. We try to do our best job with our competitive grants that we can go after, right? And if you look here in 2014 to 2025, we're getting grants no other school's getting, totaling $9.1 million, which helps pay for a lot of the stuff that I was talking about tonight, whether it's the new veterinary equipment, new welding equipment, or new aviation program, and what have you. So we continue to try to chase that so we don't have to put that burden, and we continue to give, because many of the kids that graduate, and you probably have firsthand experience, are moving back to your very towns, starting their own businesses, paying taxes, and buying the homes. Like, that's what you want. You want to kind of keep them, contributing back to the the very tax base that funded them to go to school in the first place. So we see a lot of that happening with our former graduates, so that's encouraging as well. But that fix isn't fixed. They're still talking about it, but that's a big problem.
So you're saying with your aviation program, you're maxed out at the students that you can even have as capacity. How many other programs are also maxed out, and how many programs do you have where the student gap of students that could join is 50% or lower?
So probably about 50% probably about 60% of our shops, maybe a little higher, have capacity to meet the students that would like to choose that. Then you have other shops like electrical, for one, is most popular one that has a waiting list, where they fill up. We added the third instructor to help meet that demand, but they still have 10 or 12 that want that shop on the waiting list, so they go to the number 2 choice, whatever that may be, something usually pretty close to it. Probably in the future that might be our avionics type of program we have in aviation. So there's a pecking order that kind of happens. So probably about 60 to 70% they can get what they want for their first choice. We've had it as high as 88% that have received their first choice. But that does vary depending on what shop on any given year becomes a little bit more popular. But electrical's our top.
I got one more question.
You're only allowed one.
Yes, this might sound a little crazy, but okay, let's take the electrician course.
Yeah.
There's many materials, there's many tools out there.
Yeah.
All right, so are there suppliers out there that would donate?
Oh, we get a lot of, yes.
Yeah, or even pay for you to use their products?
No, we get donations. We get.
Steel stamps and a big.
We get, yeah, with Valley Steel's here, we get co-op opportunities as a result. Our employees, each one of our shop programs have what they call a program advisory board. Those are industry partners consisting of no less than 10 industries that guide our shop instructors, donate equipment, donate supplies and materials, or formalize other companies in their catchment area to be able to do that. And they meet on a regular basis with our instructors and our teachers.
Yeah, I know like in my industry, like Klein, right?
Yeah.
Klein Tools, they'll offer not only free product, but free courses,
Yeah.
free demos, stuff like that, so I didn't know if it
Yeah,
was...
we have a lot of that going on, and depending on the shop, advanced precision machining is a great example of that. Auto Tech has some of that, electrical has some of that, big strong connection with local industry like Judd Wire. And some of the companies in, tooling use a company that provides a software training to get into some of the advanced precision machines. You get the chance to be able to do that. So there's a lot of that goes on, which is encouraging.
Cars, too.
Planes?
Cars. Planes go at the airport, they go donate cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Controlling health insurance costs would definitely help.
Yes, I agree, yes.
I have a slide that is prepared that would show the last 5 years of the assessment per pupil.
All right, let's see what we had. I showed it earlier.
Okay.
Let me see if, I think it gets you close to your question, maybe not exactly. I'll scroll right to it. Yeah, I just passed it. I believe, no, right down here. And I believe this is it here. So here we go with the assessments. You're at $19,000. You can see your town assessments for the last 4 years, or in the last couple of years, I should say. But you can pretty much extrapolate that out. You guys have always been 18,000. This first time you cracked 19, but you never been below 18 since I've been here. And you haven't, this is the first year you're above 19. So you're within that $1,000 range for the last 10, 12 years. Well, what's an interesting fact, when everyone else's per pupil expenditure is going up, ours is going down. Our overall is $12,484, so you're above our overall on the average for all 19 member towns. It was $13,100 more than 10 years ago. So it hasn't, because our enrollment's going up, you guys aren't getting bombarded with a really substantial increase per pupil.
This is related to EQV.
Yep.
Is the same EQV formula used for Frontier as well as for Franklin?
For each town, yes.
It's the same
Yeah.
formula. So,
Yeah.
okay, so the reason I'm
Yeah.
asking is because our share of Frontier went down significantly this year.
Just this year.
Student.
This year,
Yeah.
and the rationale was that the inputs to the formula had changed from prior years. Why isn't our share going down for Franklin Tech if the inputs to the formula have changed?
Isn't it all based on students?
That's
And all-
part of it, but it's just a smaller number of students and a smaller.
So you're
overall.
saying that
It did-
even though
it
the
did.
inputs would have changed? that
Yeah,
the-
it did-
the-
it did
you
go
know,
down.
The overall impact,
Yeah.
Yeah.
plus there's more towns?
Yeah, there's more
Right.
towns
Yeah.
there. But, and that number is, the capital funding, that's not part of that? is
No,
it?
I showed you that screen earlier, and that
Yeah.
was a 6,400.
Yeah, okay.
And that's the one that will be impacted by the equalized valuation that just changed this past year.
Yeah.
And that will fluctuate a few hundred here or there for the next 5, 6 years until we're done with it.
So there's, I get one last question, and that is, in the county as a whole, years and years now, student population is declining. It's forecast to keep going in that direction for the
Yeah.
foreseeable future.
Sure.
Your school, student enrollment, programs offered continually rising. How do you see your school, your role in the greater good of the whole community? In a setting where you're seeing Pioneer, Mohawk, of the schools that also happen to send some of the highest percentage of their kids
Right.
to your school, suffering the most from lack of enrollment.
Right.
And all that does, you add programs they have to cut programs, which is a vicious cycle that keeps going. Where do you see this dynamic ever changing, or how do you see it shaking out, and what's your role in all this?
Love the question. It's a great question, because as we're moving forward to a new facility at some point, the projections we were receiving were very high. They wanted us to build a much bigger facility to accommodate everything that was on our waiting list and what have you. We decided, let's throttle it back. Let's take a really good look at it. Let's build something for 600 to 625 total students, which is actually lower than we currently have in the building, right? So that we don't do exactly what you're talking about. So we don't put our towns in a situation. We value what our towns bring to our students, because collectively that's who we are. We are a member. We have school committee rep from Conway and from all our 19 member towns that provide input to our budget, our enrollment, and what have you. So we are going to be building a facility that can meet the needs of our towns. Not every kid's going to get in now. It's not going to be like it has been. We already stopped that particular practice. So we're starting to slow that curve. Based on those enrollment numbers I showed you for the next 10 years, as that catchment area slowly kind of goes down, so if you looked at that orange line, so does our incoming enrollment. It starts to try to keep pace with that. And so when we get into a new facility, we took I believe the high road, and I'm not going to propose an 800-person facility, which would, I think, be not in the best interest of all of our member regional schools. But we're going to build something with the population we currently have.
All right.
Adult education, how is enrollment been?
As far as what?
Adult continuing education for the tech
Okay,
programs.
adult continuing education is a great question. We have a grant for 1.8 million. We just received another one for 2 million. And that grant is providing adult education for free for qualified students in partnership with the Workforce Development and Mass Hire. And that's been full. This is going on year 4. And that evening school program providing that skills gap for those individuals that can develop a skill, get back into the workforce that previously are struggling with that. That gives all our communities a collective advantage. So that program itself, called our Career Technical Institute, has been fully enrolled for the last 4 years.
Cool.
Yes.
I just wanted to give a shout out to the tech school because they're heavily involved in the building of our new public safety office building.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Good.
And it's just been wonderful.
Well, yeah, the kids are great, and they earn to be out and to be able to do those type of jobs, so we're real excited. And that's the biggest key component for these kids. They gain those skills to work independently without eyeballs on them sometimes, and that's not a skill that a lot of kids have. So when we bring them out to the towns, those are the kids that are able to do that, which is really good.
How do you learn to access, like we knew that from Kenny, our police, but how would opportunities like that be known except by word of mouth? Like, how could you get a car into your auto body shop, or how would you access a team up? Like, how do you know those
So
things?
generally, it would come from a bunch of different sources, one being our website, 2 being your town rep from Conway, that sits on our school committee and helps develop our budgets and all that stuff. Or just calling the school and they direct you to the vocational director's office, and they're in charge of day and evening programs. And so that's how that would all work. And it's pretty much based on what does the problem have. If you have a car, did that car fit into the competencies and the skills that our students need in the curriculum at that point in time? If not, we can't take it.
Right.
So it's not that we don't want to, but it has to fit the curriculum where the kids are at.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Finance?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Voting for him best presenter, just like last year.
Well, take care.
Thank you.
Yep, bye-bye.
Well, do you want to finish the finance?
So Phil, we're just gonna finish with finance and then we'll get to your motion.
My thing has a little bit to do with finance.
Oh, okay, got it. All right, next on the agenda for the joint meeting with finance is discussion and vote on source of funding for the new swap shop. This
And
is
that
your
one-
baby.
That's my baby, and I'm actually gonna ask if we can table it one more week. so
Table.
I can get it.
He was in suspense.
All right, preliminary discussion on free cash.
Yes.
Okay. Oops. I'm doing that without, well, I guess I don't need to share because nobody's on Zoom right now.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
So I just wanted to put this in front of you. These are all the ideas I have heard since you've been having your discussions. And I just wanted you to get sort of an idea of how much is already being used if all of these things happen. So, you know, fire truck has been every year. The police detail special revenue fund, our accountant says absolutely needs to be bumped up by $52,000. Here's the highway tractor and excavator. You can decide if you want that out of free cash or some other source. There's the highway garage note. People talked about maybe starting a greater stabilization fund. We hadn't talked about the grammar school stabilization fund, but we know there's big expenses coming up. OPEB, I actually spoke with Mike about this, and I said, how much do we have to put in it this year? And he said, well, you could just put in 1,000 as a placeholder this year if we're strapped for free cash. That's why I brought it up to him, just in case, to give you that option, in case you didn't want to do the 20. And this one is kind of unknown, but I think it's going to be between 15 and 20,000, but we'll find out more next week when the IT group gives a presentation for the Selectboard and Finance Committee to consider. So I just wanted to have this in your head so that there's a lot of competing needs for free cash this year. So you might want to...
Save mud wrestling.
I still think that we should have a limit on the balance of free cash and not to go below a certain limit.
Yeah.
Well, rule of thumb is 3% of the living appropriate portion of the budget.
So this is why I'm bringing it up, because those are decisions that are going to
Yeah.
need to be made as you're talking about the warrant and everything, and what things you want to put forward and what
Yeah.
sources of, so
And
that's all I...
I'll lobby for the Conway Grammar School stabilization. And correct me, Phil, the last time we put money in there was several years ago, and it's at $238,000. It's
And we're fixing to spend nearly all of it.
yeah.
Boilers.
Well, when the boilers are done.
Boilers are,
Yeah.
this is gonna be the year for the boilers.
I had my hopes set on between 100 and 150 personally, but
So those, you know, there, I mean, there's a couple that could be taken out of different funds, so I just wanted everybody to have this in their head that
It's good.
there's
Good
going to
to know.
be
that's good.
decisions to be made about
Yep.
how you choose to
Excellent.
spend it.
I'll just make an observation. I've been spending a lot of time on the municipal financial dashboard from the DLS. You know, we have not raised our estimates of estimated local receipts. I think we've been kind of using that as our rainy day fund for quote unquote extra free cash, as well as other assets have increased markedly over the last couple of years. And that's two of the main reasons the actual free cash is coming above what we had originally projected. And if we keep our estimates as they are, it's a pretty good certainty that we'll be coming in again with free cash somewhere well above 5% of our levy and appropriate portion of the budget.
So after we met, I did have a conversation with Mike about that, because if you remember, the DLS put together the forecast for us and gave us the proposed
Like a moving
build-out
average, yeah.
for, and Mike agreed to it. He said, yes, it's appropriate for us to move it up to what they had recommended
All right,
for
good.
next year, so. But it's not by a whole lot, I want to say maybe 20 or 30,000. It was 234,000 for like 4 years in a row,
Yeah, 3 years
as our
in a row.
estimated, yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Alrighty.
Yeah.
okay.
Not the thumb missile.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Did you want to stay for?
So
Nice in motion?
well, there
Mass
was
session.
just,
Yeah, I
the
think
one
so.
key part of that is that we're gonna be requesting that they set up a budget line item
Yeah.
for Mass in Motion for $1.
And then a revolving fund.
And
too.
then,
Why don't we just move on to the whole discussion?
all right, and because Mike is recommending Section 53A revolving funds
Mhm.
for the grants. So,
Life Path, here we go. All right, 2 Life Path grants with massive motion.
So, all right, I don't know how much of the whole history of the application process everybody wanted to hear, but we got the Mass in Motion and the town of Conway were awarded 2 separate $3,000 grants from, actually it's from a private foundation. It's administered by Life Path, and the two grants. I'll talk about the one that's the simplest first, and that is, I called it Senior Home Services. And the idea behind that is a one-stop portal for the older residents of the town. And those over the age of 60 are 45% of our town's population. And they
Don't remind us.
when we did surveys, the top 2 by far were the ones that I ended up applying for. And actually, the home services barely eked out the Uber transportation idea. But the idea is that it's a one-stop portal where all of the town's contractors are in it, where there's contact. That's why we have a program director in that too. There's contact with each contractor, so that and it's for everything from carpentry to electric to roofing to handyman. The handyman thing is a big need, but there's a real lack of knowledge over who's really good, et cetera, et cetera. And so the idea is that these would be contacted to offer the town's seniors 10% off discount off of the regular billing, and they'll have a listing in the portal as a result. B, be willing to offer payments over time so that those on fixed incomes can avail themselves of their service, which are things that are not available now.
Is it all licensed people?
Well, some of those things, like handyman, there's no licensing for, but to the extent that it's, licensed electricians, yes.
Well, contractors.
Fire's bad.
Contractors.
Yeah.
Licensed contractors.
Yeah, yes. And then also that there would be a follow-up process as well from the program, were you satisfied with that service? And that some, so that when the next person calls, they can be given updated information.
Right.
If someone was really steer people to where the ones that have a proven track record. So that's the essence of that program.
Next door Conway.
Something like that. And that program financially is much simpler. And if you saw, there was a budget included in that grant. That budget is what we're pretty much sticking to, with one exception. Since I wrote that grant, the chief of police and Veronique asked about including the lockbox concept, and that is for the homebound seniors that either have known health issues that live by themselves, etc., that might require middle of the night EMS, fire, or police services, and are unable to get to the door themselves, and the door is locked. So, and Chief has done a program like this in Whately. It was about 8 or 9 people, but especially in our town where state police do a lot of the coverage, odd hours, etc. So that was not, that all took place after the grant was written, but so there's going to be, I believe, if the committee votes accordingly on Thursday, which I'm pretty sure they will, to amend that application or that budget to include that. It's still a home service, and to include that aspect of it, and that would be like $400 out of that project.
So, just a quick question. So this is one grant, $3,000 received so far.
Yeah.
Where does this portal live?
The portal would be on the town website.
Yeah, that, we haven't had a chance to discuss
Yeah.
any of the specifics, and we don't have the money yet because
Yeah.
it has to be approved by the select board to accept it, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a ton of questions.
Yeah, I mean, good. I mean, you know.
I mean, you're talking about having a program director, somebody who has to vet the vendors, somebody who has to manage all the communications with the seniors. This has to live on a website, it has to be relatively interactive. Roy, I mean, you know what we're talking about.
And
Well, it doesn't have to be as crazy as you're making it out.
I don't even think that sounds crazy. I think
it's not
that's
going to run itself.
And for a population that some of whom still refer to computers as infernal electric machines.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
you know,
Okay.
Well, I think the question is more about person power to make this happen.
Yeah.
And for a grant of $3,000, like how do you pay somebody to do that? Or is
Well,
it
that's
located?
that's part of the question.
Or
but I
do you
mean-
add it to a position already in town, which,
Well, no.
But if you're going to have a list of
whole
qualified vendors listed on the town website, you know, that's kind of giving your imprimatur to those vendors. And well, what happens if something goes south between
Yeah,
that relationship?
I don't know if
What
that
kind of
would go
liability
past-
do we have there?
And there would have to be disclaimers, et cetera. But the whole idea in this is that these to provide additional services to residents without burdening existing town employees with additional work.
Right, right.
And that's only fair. I mean, and so that's why it's set up so that there's program, and the program coordinator, the program director, I forget what I titled it in the grant, that's expected that that's what they would be doing. And
What about the FERCog?
Yeah,
I mean, there's so many things, this is one of them, that it just seems like would fit in with the FERCogs.
they don't do anything like this.
Which is crazy. IT is another thing that the FERCog
Mass in Motion.
should be doing.
Mass in
But-
Motion had Rachel Stoller on the FERCog staff doing.
Maybe
something.
she's on our,
Advisory.
well, she's not, our committee is 7 members of the town.
Yeah.
She comes to every committee meeting.
Sure.
And she was instrumental. She was actually on the grant review committee, but had to recuse herself from our grants. But what she did for us, the Mass in Motion committee itself, we are funded by a grant from the state Mass in Motion Office of Elder Affairs. And this is year 3 of that program. We believe we get 2,800 or something, 3,800. I forget what it is, the exact number.
4280.
Very good, that's it. You're right. So we get that every year. Last year in the summer, when we do our senior prom, which was awesome. 75 seniors came, and everybody's invited. You should come. It was really cool. It's catered lunch. It's wine. It's live music, and it was really good.
yeah, it sounds good.
It's the Saturday after town meeting at the library. But the last year, a whole delegation came from the Boston Office of Elder Affairs, and they awarded Conway's Mass in Motion. We were one of 8 towns that got their funding extended for 10 years. And the funding's already in place. The Mass in Motion program is funded by grant for the next 10 years. And
So these 2 grants, there's 2 of them, they're each for $3,000, correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
But they each have a program director who would be paid $1,500 out of each grant. So there's $1,500 for the director, $1,500 to,
So what's being asked here, because it doesn't say anything about a vote.
it doesn't, yeah, you know
Well,
what?
what is the second grant?
so the
It's
second
driving.
grant is the return of our favorite subject, the Conway Senior Uber-like transportation service.
Is that demand response from FRTA?
Yeah, so the FRTA thing, FRTA kind of crashed and burned as a sponsor. And although Tina Cote, the director of it, is a really nice lady and I like her. But basically, the more they thought about it, the more of a disconnect they felt it was to their prime mission of running buses. And the more unfair it felt to them that they're doing this for us and no one else. And this is something that every town really would really benefit for. And so what we found out really quickly when, say, the first registered driver tried to register, they were with us while we were designing the paperwork, while they went through all these initial steps with us. And it helped us because we have all the forms in place now just to cross out FRTA and put whatever, but.
We think. That's not settled yet.
Okay. You didn't need to say that, but yeah. But yeah.
It's my job to say
But
that.
But basically, the people that would try to register would get no response. No, they couldn't get anybody. They would call up. No, the person answering the phone didn't know anything about it. They couldn't, and so the initial enthusiasm, the numbers of people that were going to be, once the first person registered and started talking about how it can't get any, so it sort of died on the vine. But the whole idea here, like under FERTA, they had originally talked about $12,000, $14,000, $16,000 program, and this is smaller in scope because the grant limit was $3,000. But what we really, when we talked about it as a committee, what we really the great need, and it's sort of the dark fear of everybody that grows old at Conway, is what makes them go to the nursing home is when they can't drive anymore. And that's the thing that we need to really address. And that need, numerically every year, it's a handful, but those people really need this. And it's to our benefit as a community economically to keep them in their homes. And this is a small price for that service. And it's set up so that the only compensation that drivers will be getting is the IRS mileage. So they could be classified as contractors, if the lawyer, whatever. And then the riders will be billed at 50 cents per mile that they're driven, so that there will be a continuous influx of monies into the thing that will keep it going a lot longer than it would have otherwise. But it's also up to the program. When people call for a doctor's appointment, it's up to the program director to say, no, FERTA offers that service. You call FERTA, you call Shelburne Falls Senior Center, they 24 hours in advance, and they'll take you there and pick you up. And when they want to go to the Big Y, FERTA offers that every Thursday, and we're not duplicating services, and the vast majority of Conway's older folks have their cars, and they like driving, rather than waiting for somebody to come and pick them up, etc.
I think we're circling around to John's situation on the home, though, as who's managing, and then the liability. What happens if an accident happens?
So the primary liability is the individual driver's auto insurance, and the requirement is that they have a minimum 100/300 policy, which is what FERTA asked. That's the same setup as what FERTA did, and that's a lawyer friend would tell me that the big personal injury lawsuits come from auto accidents, don't come from the injuries. They come from the economic, the loss of job, et cetera, that don't really apply once someone's.
So hopefully we can take these forms that were already vetted and but those are some I's and T's that have not been dotted and crossed.
Yes. And because we're coming up on 8 p.m. here.
Yeah.
For these two, now on the housing one, you said you needed to add some funding.
Right, that's a separate, that's sort of an internal thing between our committee and the motion. So,
you just want to create a tab on the budget spreadsheet for your committee, and put $1 in there for the budget.
Well, we'll have to talk to Mike about how that's.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is the money is all coming. We've been awarded the money. I sent you all this evening an email from them about the consequences of it not, that they have a deadline. We got awarded it less than 2 weeks ago. Tomorrow is the deadline for the acceptance and everything else.
Which is why we're having a discussion tonight.
Okay, that's good to know.
And it had to be presented.
Yeah.
Did Mike talk to you at all about, because Mass in Motion already has a revolving fund. Did you talk to him about that? Because you've already got a place to put the
I think
grant.
he said that it needs to be a different type of, the 53A revolving fund is what he mentioned.
Okay, all right.
And I didn't.
Well, we can clarify that with him.
He said, oh yeah, you need two
But he may
revolving
not have been
funds.
remembering that you already have a mass in motion.
So these two
we'll-
funds in aggregate be up to $6,000, is that right?
I'm sorry?
These two
Correct.
revolving funds in aggregate are $6,000?
Correct.
So does it have to be a warrant in this year's annual town meeting, or we can just do it internally without?
Oh, no, that we shouldn't, this is all an issue of an acceptance of a grant, we're just trying to figure
Yeah.
out where the money is housed. That's
Yeah,
all.
but we want to, but don't we need a motion to also, aside from the dollar line item, but also for us creating a revolving fund for the grants?
I
This is
mean,
going to be, this is
that-
not a one
if-
shot.
If we need to do a revolving fund, we can certainly put that on the warrant to create,
Mhm.
because every year we have to put the amounts,
Yeah.
that in the,
All
so
right, good.
we can certainly
Thank
do
you.
that if it's necessary.
That's a good point, because it probably, the assumption is it would be,
Yeah,
right?
All right.
So,
thank
you
you
know,
for your work.
thank you. So, what I'm asking is that it would be easiest if we can submit the documents tomorrow. What he did say in that response is that if it's just a matter of a few days, yeah, that's not a problem. If it's gonna be a few weeks,
That's what I was asking
Yeah.
about, if you needed to add the money for the housing. Do we sign this as is, or?
yeah, you sign it as is. The housing is a separate thing. We'd be asking,
So that'd be a vote to sign, right?
yeah, so that, the housing, but I just wanted to let you know that there is a foreseeable change to that program's budget in that amount pursuant to the chief of police.
So there wasn't, unfortunately, it didn't occur to me to put on the vote, sorry, because this was so last minute. Will he allow it to go, so I can have it properly on the agenda for next week as a discussion and vote? And that would just be a week delay.
He said a few days.
See, because originally we had talked about, because there were two different things that I had said in my email. If Mass in Motion is allowed to accept the grant, only the select board can approve expenditures. So technically, if Mass in Motion hasn't done this yet, when you meet on Thursday, you could vote on signing to accept it. Just understanding that until the select board says their approval, you can't expend the funds.
Well, yeah, we wouldn't, of course not. I mean, we're not ready for that on either
I'm just
on either
making
account.
sure that
Yeah.
you understand that just because it was accepted doesn't mean the funds can be expended, because if there's any other questions that come, whatever, I just wanted to be clear about
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I mean, and like any other town expenditure, whose signature goes on any type of town expenditure? It's Mike's and yours, right?
It depends on the department head or whatever. Yeah, Mike doesn't sign them.
Yeah.
He signs off on them. He tells us whether or not we did it right.
Can we let
Yeah.
the finance committee go now?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, my God, we're excused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Second, yep.
Thanks.
So
So-
again, I have these two papers in front of me. I don't have a vote here.
Right,
So what can I do?
right. Well, did you fill out the grant authorization for us?
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
No.
So basically, I mean, this, from my head of time, because it came up so quickly, was that you guys needed to hear what the programs were.
Right.
If they pass a motion votes and they can sign these to accept it, this doesn't have to be.
Oh, okay, so this doesn't have to be
This
a...
doesn't have to be signed
Okay, got
by
it.
you.
Got it.
Phil has this, and he can, if Mass in Motion says Phil will sign them, then Phil can sign them.
Got it.
But it was a grant authorization form, so I wanted to give to you also that you could sign off on
Okay.
authorizing them to have done this. And because it was the grant authorization stuff came up after they had already applied,
Yeah, yeah.
so it was, yeah.
Okay, while Phil's doing that, we went through the warrants already, so
Yep.
I'll make a motion to vote to approve accounts payable warrant in the amount of $582,174.55. The payroll warrant in the amount of $150,784.75, and the payroll deduction warrant in the amount of $37,049.15.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Looked over the meeting, nope, we're not doing meeting minutes, are we?
No, I didn't finish them up today. I had to teach the iPads class because they ran out
That's
of money
right.
for the instructor.
Yeah, I heard that. No public comments, meetings attended by select board members. I did a meeting with GZA, Mr. Cantor, that I did notify George about. He will be on the next meeting to go over the plan. Also did a meeting with the RTE to go over the streetlights and our plan moving forward for that.
Okay, excellent. Didn't have anything this week.
No unfinished business. We have an application here for grant. Great. No match. The best type of grant. Okay. Moving on to new business, discussion and vote to appoint Louise Beckett to the Community Preservation Committee as the rep from the Conservation Commission for a term ending June 30th of 2025. That's very
Short.
short.
It is very short. She's taking the place of somebody else who, yeah, just.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Where's the,
Look real quick, 'cause I thought
yeah, I
I
see
had
it
that
in
right
there.
in here. I did. It's
Oh,
the very
good.
first page.
All right, here we go. Oh, that's not what I was looking for.
The castle? Yeah.
No, I was
No.
looking for Donald Jordan, but we can start
Oh,
with this.
he's at the end. That's his, there isn't anything signed, that's his application.
Oh, okay.
That's just a vote to appoint him.
Yeah, discussion and vote to appoint Donald Jordan as an all-call transfer station attendant. I'll make that motion because, you know, we're gonna have a shortage soon.
Oh, yeah. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, welcome Donald, thank you. Now we can move on to the castle. Look at that.
Sir.
All right. No match. Okay. This is just me to sign, right?
Yeah, that's fine. Well, any members who are here. So the next one is the Emergency Management Program grant that Amanda Herman has put in for, and what she's asked for this time is a projector and screen for the new the new office building, public safety office building conference room, for when they, need to.
Does this go to Phil? Does this go back
No,
here?
that goes
Okay.
to my
All right.
files.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I need a copy.
thanks. I'm sorry?
I need a copy.
You need a copy of these? Okay.
I'll hit you up tomorrow.
Okay.
Oh man, I had a projector and a projector screen.
I know. I wonder if I do.
I might still have it.
Well, if you do, we might be able to use it.
Yeah.
Get
I
an
still have a
LED
whole PA system.
Get an
too.
LED bulb.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, I mean, and I, honestly, I only just found out about this, so it's another one of those kind of last minute.
Last minute week.
Yep. So that's real similar to the one that you guys signed
Yeah.
last week.
Right.
So, in there it just says 5,200 for,
Okay.
and these are grants that are applied for every year through that
All right.
program.
What's the no match on this either?
Nope.
I will make a motion to vote to sign the castle and contract for emergency management planning program grant.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
More Eversource poll hearing.
job, Amanda.
And then, so the Eversource poll hearings, I got a second one in the meantime after I put this on the agenda. They're for new polls and a new mid-span poll.
Busy in town, aren't
I
they?
know, on Maine and North Poland. Maine, Poland, and North Poland. So we have to set the poll hearing date.
Susan's done it tonight with the whole crowd here.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Well, you have to advertise 2
No,
weeks.
I know.
Yeah. So
Kidding.
the soonest we can do it would be April 14th, which would then, if I get this in tomorrow, would mean it could be advertised on the 31st and the 7th to be good for the 14th. So you can do it later if you want. I just wanted to let you know the earliest you could do it.
Okay. Earlier the better.
Okay, so we'll shoot for the 14th?
Yes.
Okay. Oops. Terrific.
And hopefully they have the right documentation this time. Phyllis is gone.
Yes, I just spoke with her.
I know,
So
I'm sorry.
she asked, that's what I was, she asked to table that joint meeting until next week.
Okay.
Okay, tabled. So that's 2 things tabled. And meeting minutes. Okay, mail, National Grid petition.
Oh, and also the thank you letter from the governor.
Oh, yes. Veronique received a very
Oh,
nice
good.
thank you letter from Governor Maura Healey. And then after she was with Veronique, she was on Seth Meyers' show, which was pretty cool to see.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the day after.
Well, that's a big step down.
So, nothing really to say about the National Grid petition. They came to my house to cut down a pine tree that doesn't exist. So they're about as good as Eversource with their planning.
I have one I could have to feel good about it.
Items on anticipated 40 hours of events, nothing there. Any select board comments, concerns?
Nope,
Nope, none.
we're finalizing the school budget Thursday night, hopefully.
TA updates?
I think
You want to table those to the next?
you can read them.
Yeah, I already read them.
You read them, yeah. There's nothing in particular I wanted to point out, so no.
No announcements, anything else? Giving everybody a last chance here. I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.